Okay, we are recording. So thank you guys so much for taking the time this afternoon to log on to this session. Talking about continuous improvement is something that we do a lot, and there's a lot of information out there that you can go get for yourself, and also we're trying to share as much information as we can. But I really wanted to take this opportunity to, first of all, do a follow-up to the excellent presentation that Donna Foster did for us during our first ever assessment event. And so, hey Candace. So yeah, I wanted to take the opportunity to sort of circle back around with some of the items that she went over, talking about improvement actions, and also take the opportunity to let you guys do some of the talking and sharing, because I feel like for me at least, the best part of that assessment event was when everyone started chiming in. Oh, you could do this. Oh, I did that. Because I think the best way, I can give you all of the PowerPoint, presentations about assessment in the world, but I think the thing that helps the most is when you talk to your peers, you collaborate, you hear what they've done or what they think is going to help in their situation, and you take away. And also, I think that there is a lot more opportunity for collaboration for you guys to help program coordinators with what is a very daunting process to gather a lot of information. And everything that's happened with COVID and having to pivot and put things online that had never been online before, I think gives us an opportunity to sort of step back and say, okay, what is everybody else doing? What can I learn from my peers? So this is going to be a really informal session, and I want I don't want to do talking because you guys are the ones who teach and, actually put these improvement actions to work. And you can certainly comment and say, well, I tried this and here's why it was great, or here's why it wasn't. I've also taken some examples from us. I know that, Donna, what she showed, her examples may have been a little bit different. Some of it was probably similar, but I think it really helps us to see it in the forms that we're used to filling out. I thought that might be helpful. So I've taken some examples from different divisions that we can sort of chat over and look at and see. Also, some of these improvement actions that we're going to talk about student success may not necessarily be something that has to do with performance necessarily, but it might have to just do with the circumstances that the students are in. And there are definitely some new and challenging circumstances that have started within the last few semesters. So I'm going to go ahead and get my PowerPoint presentation up and share my screen. Okay. All right. So first and foremost, you want to talk about planning. And I think the best way to sort of approach this process, the circular process that we talk about quite a lot, is to talk about where we are right now at this moment, what you all may be thinking about. I really feel like the assessment process happens all year long, but I think that, especially for program coordinators, so much other stuff is going on that it may sort of hit you in September. And so I want us to talk about and share strategies that will help all of you sort of get rid of some of that burden, both through collaboration, but through organization as well. So right now, you guys have just put in your results. and you've just put in those developing supportable conclusions. You filled in that field that has those improvement actions in it. So it's fresh in your mind. So I think right now, probably since you put them in, and since we've had all of this professional development the last month or so, the wheels may still be turning for all of you. And you may, if you're anything like me, at 2:30 in the morning, you wake up and you're like, oh, I should do blah, blah, blah. And so I email it to myself. But you may actually, right now is a really good time for your planning process to really be flowing and creative. And so you may want to start jotting stuff down that you've heard over the last month or so. And also you've got a good opportunity right now to talk to your faculty. So yesterday I actually ran into a faculty member who had a question about student learning outcomes. And it was so interesting. The faculty member said to me, I just feel like the process is so daunting because I don't have a lot of time to talk to my faculty. They, of course, give me all of the data, but sometimes I feel like we don't have a chance to sit down and talk about the details, about what improvement actions they may have made that just didn't make it to the program coordinator or didn't come up in that conversation. And so I want to ask the group, do you all meet with your faculty to talk about improvements or about student learning outcome results at the end of each semester? I know Melissa has to, and Denisha, they have to reach out because otherwise it's overwhelming because there are too many people involved. But I'm just curious, other program coordinators, can you guys chime in and let me know if this is really something you guys only talk about once a year, or do you talk about it every semester?
We talk about it every semester in nursing. We look at every course, look at what's going on with it, with the students, and our student learning outcomes, how we're meeting them or not meeting them, and what we can do about it.
Is that something that you guys keep on paper, Candace? Have you or Susan made a table to kind of remind everybody what all of the changes are, or is it just done through conversation?
In the past, it's been done through conversation, but with the reorganization, we're streamlining things more. Unfortunately, a lot of times the faculty have not been involved in some of the more detail. We have faculty meetings and we document everything,
right,
but it never makes it past that. And so now Susan and I are working together. We've got the faculty working together, and we're all streamlining all our data. We're really coming up with a good plan, and we're excited about it. We've always done it, but it never had anything concrete to show for it, but now we do.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else? Denisha, can you talk a little bit about how you've worked with Associate of Science and Associate of Arts, since that is a lot that you have to kind of organize? Uh-oh, you're still muted.
Yeah, I'm still putting along on Zoom, believe it or not. So to be completely honest, this is really my first go around putting my hands to it.
Right.
Last year I kind of started easing into it, but Melissa did a lot of that last year. So this year, I've just really had to, given the year we've had, I've just had to kind of, as we needed it, kind of ask for it.
Right.
And what this go around has taught me, the cycle of gathering and submitting all of the student learning outcomes and all this information has taught me is that, you're right, we do need a different way to approach it to make it easier, not just for me and Melissa on our end, but easier for the faculty to gather it. The perception is, and I can speak to this as a faculty member as well, the perception is oh gosh, it's time for me to do that, right? Like I just got all my final grades in and, here's the email I'm getting, I got to get this information gathered as well. And so it does have a reputation of being an added burden of information. And especially if you're doing it on the other side of final exams, you're already out the door in a lot of ways because you've just gotten those students wrapped up and you're halfway off campus already. So you're right. It's better to figure out a way to tackle it before it becomes, the very last thing on the list that you have to get done. And one of the things I've realized in working with you and with Donna and with Melissa is that, one of the things that came to me is that it doesn't have to be at the end of the semester, right? Like you're saying, it can, sometimes the item that we're assessing in our class happens earlier in the semester. And so if we can get people accustomed to thinking, okay, well, if this is a piece of my SLOs, right? I've already gotten information from it. Let me go ahead and gather that information, and I can even submit it, now. Then that's probably going to be a lot easier for the faculty member and for program coordinator or the dean. Does that speak to what you were asking, Leah?
Definitely, yes. Anybody else want to talk about sort of if you have a process or a plan with you and your faculty? For the most part, I think most programs are pretty small. You don't have a whole lot of faculty. I think that the two people with sort of the most people involved have spoken. And so I imagine a lot of this just happens in conversation whenever you guys can do it. I will say though that if there is something that you can put on paper, and I know that I mentioned over here on this slide, just about I think if you get it down on paper, it makes it takes some of the mystery and maybe some of that like fear or negative feelings out. If you're like, okay, this is the assessment that I know we've said we're going to change, and this is what the change is. Even, like I say, something as simple as a table, it might help with that process so that there isn't sort of that last minute rush and then you have sort of a negative connotation. I definitely think that's a good idea.
I think we're all so busy and run around like chickens with our head cut off half the time. Excuse the country phrase. But anyway, we are very, very busy, and things just get pushed to the back burner. And like Janisha said, when this final grades are ringing, we are out of here. We're going for some relaxation. We don't have to think about nothing. We're going to get some beer. We're going to do something.
Exactly.
But maybe if we printed it out, and I think it's in compliance assist, so it's kind of hidden. And it's one of those things, we only have to think about it twice a year, really, when we put them in and when we have to put in the results. But yeah, maybe if we pull it out and print out the form and keep it in front of us and look at it every so often and say, oh, we did that. Go ahead, let me go in and do this now, mark it off the list. I think that'll help with what Denisha said. Keep it in front of yourself all the time. Once you've accomplished something, go ahead and document it, get it done, so you can move on to something else.
Exactly. And because a lot of the burden does fall on the program coordinator, who at that time of year is not only are you worrying about closing everything up, but you're in the new semester. Like, you're thinking about courses and getting people registered, all of that. So I think that these sort of little ideas, if any of you can take something from it, it's definitely a good idea. Also, I think this right now, though sometimes it has happened later, I really think that right now, for program coordinators, especially new program coordinators who maybe inherited SLOs that they are not 100% comfortable with, I know that I talk about this a lot, but I want to say it one more time. Do not feel like you have to keep your predecessor's student learning outcomes. You do not at all. I think if you want to get them changed, right now is a good time to do it while it's still fresh. And also while your dean has recently looked at it, and there are a lot of good conversations that can happen about it. So continuing on with plan, right here I'd put in create a table for each course that has those actions that you put in that develop supportable conclusions box back in September. And also, you've had a month to think about it. You may look back at what you put in that box since all of this, professional development that we've done that's been really, I think inspiring. We've had a lot of great people talk to us lately about, continuous improvement and assessment. You may actually want to go back and look and say, oh, I need to add something to that. Don't be afraid. Don't feel like once you tell me, okay, Leah, I did it, you can't touch it again. It is a continuous process, and you may realize now in fall an improvement that needs to be made. Go ahead and throw it back into the previous year box. So that way it's written down somewhere, you make sure you don't lose it. And also plan these meetings. If you feel like you're not getting anything from your faculty except for numbers, and you're sitting there trying to think of things that they may have done, go ahead and plan the meetings. If you have to do them on a Friday, if you have to do them face-to-face, if you have to do them on Zoom, just so that some of that burden is turned into collaboration and you have a plan of how to gather. And it may be that they just keep notes for you. Something as simple as you saying, hey, I'm going to need more than what you're giving me. So also, you may, on the flip side of that collaboration thought, you may have put in your planned actions for next year what you want to be done, and it may not have trickled down to them. Make sure that it's a two-way street, both that the faculty is giving you what you need, but if you've got ideas, make sure that you get them out to your faculty. And once again, putting this in a table, writing it down, and having it in front of you, like Candace said, is a great strategy, and I think will help on all sides. Okay, so you've planned, you know what you want to do, you know where your weaknesses are, and you think you have an idea of how to fix them. Now you're going to execute. If you change your plans mid-year, don't let that bother you. Just write it down, make the adjustments that you need to make. I feel like sometimes people say, well, I put that I was going to do so-and-so, and I did that, but it didn't work. Don't just coast to the end of the year. You know, go ahead and make another adjustment and continue to write in those boxes. You guys, Compliance Assist, you can log in and put stuff in those boxes at any time. You know, don't feel like you have to wait and sort of hold everything back. Be entering results along and along. If it helps you to get it down, and if you're like, oh, I don't want another document to have to mess with, I don't want something else to keep up with, go ahead and log in Compliance Assist and put it in there as well. Check in with your faculty to make sure that everything is included, everything that you said you were going to do, that everybody's on the same page. And sometimes it's easy because there are 3 faculty, and sometimes it's difficult because there are 10. But everybody needs to sort of choose that strategy and, you know, collaborate however you need to. And also encourage them to make changes on the fly, because I know they do. You all do. You guys constantly will see that everybody failed a test. And okay, so we're going to have an extra session, or we're going to do this, or I'm going to give you this OER or this video or this website to go over, and then we're going to do a quiz or whatever it is. You guys do those things all the time, but you don't write them down, and usually you don't remember them. Even if it's something simple that you do on the fly, try to record as much as you can and encourage your faculty to do that as well. So gathering and collaborating. This is the same sort of stuff we've been talking about. Doing it during the semester rather than waiting until the end, because there's so much stuff happening in September. It's not easy. I will say this as well. I also foresee our assessment days, like our assessment event that we had. I really think that time, rather than doing a speaker, this year we were kind of, because of Corona, we were like, okay, let's go ahead and just get someone in and do everything over Zoom. I really see that time as your collaboration time. I see that time as if you haven't been able, if you guys haven't had time to sit with your faculty and say, okay, this is what we said we'd do last year, have we done it or not? that time could be reserved for those conversations, for research if you need to. If there's something that you've tried and you know midstream it's not working and everybody needs to sit together and brainstorm. So I really see those assessment event days as a possibility for that work, because, you know, it's on the calendar. It's not one more meeting that you have to worry about. It's already there. And so I feel like, you know, fingers crossed, once things are more normal, that time really could be valuable for that. And even if we have to figure out a way to do it in groups with separate Zoom meetings, I think it would be worth it to try to next time give most of the time to your group work and you individually talking about your own program rather than just an overview of, you know, items or troubleshooting or anything like that. And also, I know that Candace had told us a while ago, and it was such a great idea, about using the sort of notes function in D2L in the course itself that then gets copied along to the next, you know, semester or whatever. That's still a great idea. I know after we mentioned it, did anybody start using that function? No? Okay. Well, it may be, and I know Candace, since you were the ones to tell us about that, it may be a good idea for you to, or for one of you guys to actually show me, and let's get on Zoom and record how to do it. So that way, if there are faculty who have not played with that feature, we actually have something in video, like a tutorial, so they know where it is and they know how it works.
It's not actually a feature.
It isn't? Okay.
No, Leah. All they do is go in and make like a module under content.
Okay.
It's in a copy of it. It's called, you name it, feedback. And then it's only available for the faculty to see.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime they change things or they have a suggestion of how to improve something for the next course or the next semester, they go in and put it there.
Okay.
Instead of trying to figure out where to do it later, go to that course, put it in there, and the next time you run it, you say, oh, you know what, this is what I plan on doing, let me go ahead and do it.
Okay.
So it's not anything special they have to do, it's just making them a little module under content that says feedback that only faculty can document under.
Okay, great. I may actually, Candace, ask you to do some screenshots of an example that I can sort of include and disseminate out to anybody, to everyone, just as a reminder that it's something super easy that if they're not using it, they should be.
Okay.
Any other suggestions that you guys, something, and it doesn't have to be something that you're currently doing. It may just be something that you've thought about over the last month. Okay, maybe I should start doing this to help me keep up with it. Nope. Okay, well, listen, if you think of something, please interrupt me. Like I said, I want this to be as collaborative as possible. All right, so let's talk about the next sort of part of the circle, which is the reflection. Now we're getting into end of the year. September is upon us. And suddenly, as a program coordinator, you've got the really hard job of getting everything from everybody and putting it in. And most importantly, figuring out what worked, what didn't, why, and what you're going to do about it. So I know that we've talked lately about sort of the 3-year comparison. The very first thing you should do before you put anything into Compliance Assist is print out your SLOs from the previous year. Read them, write all over them. And then at that point, start putting your thoughts together. And that way, at that point, you can really see what happened. If there's a weakness, was it fixed? Is there a different weakness now? Do you realize that the assessment itself is flawed and you need to not do it anymore? This is really where the hardest part of the process happens. And there's a lot going on during this time. You know, it's end of summer. You're worried about fall, and, you know, more than at this point you are what you just finished. You've put it to bed. You're more worried about the future. But it's a good time to do that. Hopefully, if you've done stuff earlier and you've got 2 other semesters worth of stuff kind of either in a table or in notes or somewhere in a module somewhere that you can also pull into it, it's going to make your life so much easier. Alrighty. Also, at this point, and you'll see kind of coming forward in the examples that we're going to look at this point, what you're thinking about and your results should both support and inform big changes that are happening or that need to happen in your program. So if there are curriculum changes needed, if you need to change something that your accreditation agency, maybe your standards have changed and you know that next year everything's going to be different and the statements have got to be redone and all of that, start thinking about that at this point. And also maybe you need to seek accreditation. There are a few programs I know, I think CPT, they had talked about maybe doing ABET accreditation. So at this point, you know, you've got to start letting those sort of plans make their way into your, you know, your statements and your results and your use of results. And also, of course, this year it's a big one, changes in teaching or delivery mode. There's been a lot of that lately. And so we're going to talk a little bit later also about quality matters and what's going on as well. But there are probably classes that you never taught online before. And those assessments suddenly were online and they were not before. And so your sort of process, there may be things that you need to comment on, not just about the assessment itself and if it's a good assessment or not, but how the change in delivery mode has affected that. So these were the list of improvement actions. This came from Donna Foster's presentation. And I thought that this was a really great list. And I think that probably for you guys, there's some of these that you definitely, you know, could quickly say, oh yeah, that might work. More than one of them on this list, depending on any assessment. You say, okay, I can revise the test questions, or okay, I can certainly add some additional OER or videos for the students to refer to. However, I feel like these actions are certainly valid and have to do, of course, with student learning and, you know, what's going on in a classroom and how information is being delivered. But I think in a lot of cases, there's more that you guys have to take into consideration based upon the current climate of COVID, what your students are dealing with, our student population, what their responsibilities are, what are their needs as far as flexibility. I think that's thinking about those deeper issues also are important. And you can see that in some of our examples that are about to come up as well. So first of all, we're going to look at CPT. So for this one, the goal was that 70% of students would be able to complete and practice troubleshooting strategies while doing the PC repair services. So that's in a lab. And so it looks like this year, the actual results were 80%. 80% of students got a 70 or greater. But you can see that Latrice has added some really interesting information here. She said that students, this included the demonstration of soft skills. That's great. Thank you very much for the QBP. And she clicked that box for us. And also she put in that this was a 3% decrease from last year. So here's where it gets interesting. So what's up with the 3% decrease? And she said, out of the students enrolled, we had 2 of them that had to withdraw after the add drop period due to unforeseen life circumstances that kept them from participating in this activity. We also saw that some could not complete all of the hours due to work and childcare issues. So in this case, she's not necessarily talking about the assessment itself, but she's talking about her students. And so this story that she's telling is not just about the assessment, but it's about her program, other issues as well. So it's about maybe talking about other options that she needs to serve that group of students who have other issues, you know? So you can see here in her develop supportable conclusions, she's given us a lot of good information about what she wants to do next year. She said, we're gonna go to full simulation virtualization to accommodate the increased trend on students who have to work. So, like I said, in this case, in this specific one, she didn't talk necessarily about the assessment itself, but she talked about how the students had to overcome, there's a barrier there that she needs to meet, that really, once she does this, not only is it going to improve student learning, it's just going to give students flexibility that they need. So I pulled this example because I thought that, you know, this is a deeper look at really serving students and accommodating their learning in a deeper way than the things on this list. This is a great list, and this is definitely stuff that you need to keep in mind. But I love how this is the story of really why students have problems and why they may not have done as well. It has more to do with their other issues. And I know that all of you guys have students who, you know, that's the nature of the students that we serve. You know, we're in a low income area. They've got other issues. Life sometimes gets in the way. And so I really like that she's got that idea, and she knows, okay, if I don't make things more flexible, if I don't get in this simulation, I'm not serving students. Example 2. All right, so this is Richard's program. So for this one, his goal that 80% of students would score a B or greater in the lab programming demonstration for PLC, controlled process lab assessment. Okay, so the actual results were 100%. So 100% of students completed the lab with a B or better. That's great. There were 13 student participants, and they were in 2 separate lab sections. He's giving me all the good information I need. He's not just saying 100%, he's telling me how many 100% is. Because Denisha, your 100% could be 300 people. But Richard's, in this case, his 100% was 13 people. So that's something that I think sometimes you're focusing on filling in what I've asked you for. And you're right, I've asked you for a percentage, but it really puts it into context for readers, not only from your personal accrediting agency, to give them an idea of how many 100% is, or 50%, which sometimes is more of the case. If you're talking about 6 people and 2 people don't do well, 2 people doesn't sound like a lot, but when there's only 6, it's a problem. So give me a little bit more. That's something that you can sort of jot down on your to-dos, is if you're not telling the full story of what that percentage means, you can start doing that. And I think it definitely will help, not only, like I say, if you have an accrediting agency, but also, of course, for SACS, because they're going to pull at random. They're going to flip through and stick their finger in the book, of course, you know, and say, oh, I'm going to read this one. And they may read 3 of them, and that's out of hundreds. So yeah, give as much information as you can. And so you can also see here that he said this year's results reflect an increase of 12%. That's amazing. So let's look. So he goes further here, and based on his assessment, what factors influence the results. So he's talking about, you know, an instructor-led programming practice session. He realized that they needed to practice the skill and they needed to practice it earlier. So for you guys, I know that many of you have put in very similar statements to these, and that's great. It's just a matter of keep sort of reminding yourself that more detail is better. And Richard's got a lot of detail in here for us. And so we get a really good picture of what his students are experiencing and what sort of led to the 12% increase. But he also despite that great increase, he had said that instead of just prior to the practical, it needs to be done earlier in the semester. Now, I will say this. This is only the first year that he's had 100%. But let's say hypothetically that 3 years from now, his goal is still 80%. But for the last 3 years, he had 100%. Does anybody see that as an issue? Yes, I see Denisha's kind of, yeah. If there are a lot of your assessments that you may have an 80 or 85% goal, but for the last 4 years, you've had 100% result. That's been your achievement, is 100%. I would encourage you that if you've had 2 or more, I would say by the time you hit year 3, it's time to change either reset your goal or think about assessing and including an assessment that really is going to be a better indicator. Just something to keep in mind. I know we all love to see 100%, but you need to really vary what you're assessing or change the way it's worded or change your goal. If you're knocking it out of the park 100%, you're really kind of shooting yourself in the foot and you're not telling a really good story about your improvements that of course are being made, but I can't really see them because all I see is 100% every year. For all I know, you're doing the same thing over and over. So just something to keep in mind. And finally, this is an example in AAAS, and I really liked the way Denisha and Melissa put in their results here. So you can see that the goal is 80%. This is dealing with the genetics problems in a lab quiz in bio. So 60%, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to hit my space bar there. 66% of students were able to get the problems answered correctly and demonstrated critical thinking or logical thinking skills. Alrighty. So based on the assessment data, what factors influence the results? So you can see here that students in the course would benefit from more practice and engagement with the concept. With such, they stand a better chance of mastering the competency. Also, we're talking earlier about collaboration. This is a clear example of how the faculty have collaborated. The word collaborate is in there. Conversation has been had, and I like it because we can see that everyone is working together to just try to figure out how to fix the problem. Some instructors noted that Math 102 should be a prerequisite for Bio 101 because students need more knowledge of algebra coming in before they do this assessment. And many students just don't have the math skills to get them through. So I really like down here, I know that we've said, it may take it one sentence. If you write one sentence in this box, it's got to be a really good sentence. But I know that some people are like, geez, how much of a paragraph does it have to be? Just put it in bullets. These are their plans for improvement. And it's really clear, it's easy to read. And also, all she has to do is copy these and put them in the table if she wants to. It's really easily, it's already organized to do that if she wants to. Additional genetics practice problems. requiring that Math 102 become a prereq, providing students with Zoom lecture videos, and add practice problems to the lab so that students can do that before they come take the quiz. They've got that early introduction. So these were all really great examples. And I know that you all have lots of really great examples too, but I really want you to take 5 to 7 minutes and take a look at your SLOs. Log into Compliance Assist, or you may actually have already printed them out. You may have them in a file folder somewhere on your desk. If you will, go ahead and take a look. Just choose randomly, or if there's one that's been sort of marinating over the last month that you remember you put results in, but you're thinking, you know what? We may be able to do blah, blah, blah. If you will, take just a few minutes and look at one of your assessments. And most importantly, look at what you put in the box, in the Develop Supportable Conclusions box. And see if anything that we've talked about today would make it, you know, possible for you to update that statement. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. Okay, so I'd love to get a little bit of group feedback. Did any of you take a look at what you had put in in September and question yourself and say, oh, I wonder if I should have added XYZ? Will anyone chime in and see if what we've been talking about today and really over the last month may have affected what you recently put in?
Yeah, I think there's room for improvement with my supportable conclusions. I have my key findings, you know, I think I have that pretty well detailed, the percentage and the amount of the students and all of that, but I may need to add more to my supportable conclusions. Even though, you know, some of the stuff I have is what I'm planning on doing,
Okay.
but I may have to, like you said, tie in from the previous year, you know, like last year I did X, Y, Z, and this year that didn't work as well. So now the upcoming year I plan to do whatever. So I think I'm gonna go back in and at least add more to the conclusion.
Okay. So you have your actions, like you have a plan, it just didn't necessarily get all the detail written down that you wanted. Anybody else? I will say that Kevin had a really good idea about engaging faculty in the process. Some of your faculty may have no idea what your assessment pages or the fields in Compliance Assist even look like. You may have asked them for this data and they may have sent it to you, but they may not have a clear understanding of the process itself and what it is that you have to do. So he's going to make sure that his faculty actually get a copy of the form in Compliance Assist so that he gets a little bit better information back from them. Does anybody else do that? When you ask for assessment results from faculty, does anybody, you know, include that? Nope. I think it's a great idea, Kevin. Anyone else want to share? Okay. We will move on to the next slide. Oh, sorry. I meant to start from where I was. I'm going to scoot forward a little bit there for our examples. Sorry if I am, there we go. Pitfalls to avoid. So just to wrap everything up, just a few quick things to keep in mind. First of all, if you haven't made any significant changes, stop and go and talk to your dean and say, okay, I need to figure out what my improvement actions are and get them going. But in most cases, you guys have done improvement actions. You just haven't put the changes in the compliance assist. So, you know, if you see that you've done an assessment and for the last 3 years, you haven't met your goal and what you've been doing isn't working, then you need to do a little more research. You need to think outside the box. You need to collaborate with your faculty. And I would also say, and you know, you guys can back me up on this or agree or disagree, it may be that the assessment is flawed. If you really have found that for whatever reason, you're not reaching the goal over and over, you know, that might be a possibility. So something else to think about as far as changing what assessments you're using or the way the statement is written. And also we talked earlier about if you've hit 100% 3 years in a row, but you haven't increased your target, either increase your target or think about doing another assessment. Don't say the word continue. And even if you don't say the word continue, but you find another way to say, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, there are always things that you can improve on. So don't fall into that, into that trap of doing what you've always done before. And don't use the same statements for convenience or just because, well, you know, I guess they're fine. Don't feel like you're married to someone else's statements that you inherited. You know, change whatever you need to change. And also, you know, don't, you know, make sure that key program or student issues, things that you know are a problem for your students, make sure that that shows up in your SLOs. So something that just sort of comes to mind for nursing students. I know that, you know, drug calculations is an issue. That's a problem. And so there have been a lot of different, you know, assessment improvement actions that have been done by the nursing faculty to make sure that students, you know, get more practice and that they have an opportunity to have tutoring. A lot of different things have been done. So that is a known issue in that program. If you've got a known issue in your program, make sure it shows up in here. And if it's not something that's covered in a current statement, write a new statement. Get that assessment in there somehow. Because those are, you know, those known issues that you deal with for numerous years in a row, you want to document in here that an issue has been dealt with, that you've tried different things, and that student success was achieved through whatever method. So, all righty. So we kind of went through the whole cycle and we made it back to where we started, planning again. So just, you know, the act of improving is just as important as the actions that you write in. If you know that part of the problem is that you're not talking to your faculty, that you don't have good communication, that's just as important as, you know, the actions that you're doing directly in your assessments and your student learning. So don't be afraid to put in those strategies into your SLOs, and definitely put them into your program review. But yeah, I think that improving the process of how you collaborate, certainly work that in as well if you need to. We talked earlier about a lot of different ways to make the process more manageable. And I'm sure there are a lot of other tools and things that you may be wanting to share. You may not want to share them right now in this, webinar. But if there is something that you are doing that keeps you organized, please email it to me so that I can share it with the group. Because you may say, oh, this is just a simple thing that I do. It may really be a valuable tool that might seem simple to you, but may actually really solve a problem for another program coordinator. Finally, I wanted to remind you about one of the suggested resources that was at the very end of Donna's presentation was a website called learningoutcomeassessment.org. And I don't know if any of you have taken a look at it. It says it cannot be found. So that means I must have typed something incorrectly. Let's look right quick. Here we go. This is a really great resource. If you have not perused this website, I would encourage you to. There are so many good things on this resource list for teachers or instructors who've had to move to online because of COVID. This resource list has some great stuff on it. It's articles, it is, surveys, it's all kinds of great reports, a lot of really great information that is very relevant right now. And there are also some really good student resources in here as well. Tips for learning during disruption. And I know that all of you guys have had to, I know that especially we've had conversations, Candace, I know you talked about how you have issues that have come up with your nursing students this year that have never happened before. And I think a lot of that is because our students are dealing with not only having themselves learn online, but for a lot of them trying to get their children where they need to be with online learning. So this tips for learning during disruption is really valuable. So that's one that I wanted to highlight for you guys. But yeah, check this website out because there are so many great resources that may be good for you and your faculty here. And so finally, and I just mentioned sort of these things that are at the top here. I want to talk about the Quality Matters process. And so if you don't know, there are 10 courses. Crystal has been sort of leading this project for us. We became a member of the Quality Matters Institute, and it is a self-assessment process for online courses. And we are doing 10 courses per semester. I know that a lot of you may have had courses certainly that were never online before, but they became online once COVID hit. And so that whole Quality Matters process, there may be courses that either are on the list to be done, and you can reach out to Melissa. She has the list of courses, the first 10 courses that were done and the next 10 that are planned. And you may have one of your courses that recently became an online course that you just really need some help with. You need some insight, to see what can be done to improve them. If you have a course that you want to go through that Quality Matters process, please reach out to Melissa and request that. So are there any questions or any other comments or tips that you all want to share with the group before we sign off?
Well, I just want to ask, is it real difficult for you to do that spreadsheet again? Because I really find that helpful. You know, those spreadsheet that you gave out with everything in Excel?
You mean like with all of your results on it, with every field in it? Yeah, I can print that out for you, sure.
You don't have to print it. You can send it to me in an Excel spreadsheet because that way I can, look at the flow and make sure everything is flowing correctly. Especially, I need this year because
with 1920 added.
Yeah, because I was slack. I didn't put it in the spreadsheet. I just typed it straight in the compliance assist, and I just don't have it where I need it.
Sure, I'm happy to.
Bother.
All righty.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, sure. Anyone else? All righty. Well, I'm 4 minutes over. Thank you guys so much for logging on. And if there is anything that you were hoping I would touch on that I didn't, or if you have ideas that we can share, please reach out and let me know, because I think that the more we talk about this and the more we share, the easier this process is going to be and the better it'll be for our students. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have a really good weekend.
Thanks, Leah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leah. Everybody have a good weekend.